I was speaking with one of my clients yesterday, and she was terrified to do her first pre-buy experience. So it took her a little bit to get up and going. And then when she sent everything out, like the link to join her workshop, she sent the wrong link. So of the 80 leads that were supposed to show up, they're all kind of mismatched. And then it turned into like only 10 who showed up. She's got some great next steps, but one in particular that's over 50 grand for a B2B business.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Ground Up. Another awesome guest we have here. Actually, really excited about this opportunity to learn from this guest myself. And obviously, everything that I'll be able to learn from Ryan, obviously, we'll be able to share with you guys here on the call. Ryan, before I'll get you to tell us a lot about yourself, but before we do that, how's your day going?
It's going well, man. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate the invite and love talking shop like this. I'm going to let's share some pearls of wisdom, my man.
Absolutely. I think that's what it's all about when you get to the stage of where I'm at in my career, and it sounds like you and I are at very similar places. One of the most enjoyable things is to get back to the people who've not yet walked in those shoes yet, and to be able to help people not make the mistakes that I made early in my career, you probably made in your career. Sometimes there's an argument of sometimes those mistakes are necessary to make us who we are, but avoid them when you can and find other mistakes to make is kind of my philosophy, right, Ryan?
Yeah, pretty much, man. We're just stacking mistakes because they propel us forward. In fact, I think, dude, we will make more mistakes throughout our entrepreneurial journey, our 9-to-5 journey, than we will wins. It's just that the wins, they're going to weigh a lot more. Right? The mistakes in some cases are just going to be hollow, even though they feel like they're heavy. But overall, the wins are going to weigh more.
Yeah, I had a guest on my podcast a couple months back, and they said, don't judge me by the wins, but judge me by the losses. And that's going to be a true determination of the leader I can be. And when he said that, it was just like, it couldn't be a more way I look at my life, at my business. I mean, I don't know, Ryan, we haven't gotten too much into your personal life, but for me, I'm a father. I've got a 5-year-old daughter and I've got a 2-year-old son. One of the big challenges that I am encountering is because I've had a decent amount of success in my career, I have the ability to provide my kids with a lot more luxury than I had growing up. But I do think that part of the struggle I had as a child and growing up allowed me to be the person I am today with the resilience I have. Have you ever considered that in regards to like when you can provide a lack of resistance, how important resistance still is in a child or an entrepreneur's lifetime?
Yeah, it's so important, man, because it teaches you the value of patience. It teaches you the value of being able to stretch your knowledge to achieve some form of an outcome. And at certain stages, that outcome looks small. Looks like the 1%er that we like to talk about, right? Stack those 1%ers. But in a nation, I guess in a world at this stage, where we want everything right away, as fast as possible, the easy street, it just reminds us that there really is no hack of sorts to get what we want. Hack, and we'll use that in quotes, is still going to require hard work and patience and the resistance and so on. So can't help but align with everything you just said right there.
Yeah, and one of the biggest journeys I've had over the past couple of years is my business partner has taught me so much. And one of the things I could tell you about myself, and this will kind of lead into getting to know a little bit more about you, is I always found it challenging for me to be willing to invest into what people already knew. And I was a guy that was very curious. I was very capable. When I wanted to learn something, I would be able to go self-learn it. I've always been a guy who listened to a ton of podcasts. When I've not been working, I've been learning about the things that I do for work. I think that's a vital thing I look for when I hire people for my team is how passionate and motivated you are around what you actually do. But one of the things that was taught to me, which was instead of going to try to learn everything yourself and make those mistakes, there's a ton of great resources and people out there like you, Ryan, who already have learned the things that you want to know and just learn from them. So over the past couple of years, we've invested into different training programs, different coaches. I've really invested into mentorship for me in my journey, and it has allowed me to grow rapidly. And that kind of leads into what you do, Ryan. So without me explaining what you do, I'd love to you tell the audience, kind of explain to me what you do, where you come from, and where you are today.
Yeah, starting where I come from and then kind of panning into that, and I'll keep this super brief, but my entire career is based in partnerships, full-blown partnership mode. So out of college, I became a corporate recruiter. And from being a corporate recruiter, I went to work at a digital startup roughly in 2010 that was recruiting content creators to come into this digital network where we'd get access to their video inventory, and then we'd package it, all the viewership behind it, and go and sell it to large sponsors like the Pepsis of the world and so on. So we were selling media. And that ultimately was my first foray into building content-run businesses, or at least content-led businesses. And at the boom of social media, from YouTubes of the world, the TikToks, Instagrams, and Facebooks of the world, all of that really parlayed into doing this full-time for myself. So after selling multiple content businesses, working directly at Google on the YouTube team, and then helping start and scale other content style businesses, I finally just said, well, why don't I just do this for myself? I'll lead with the content and eventually start helping people who want to build a knowledge-based business like coaching or consulting, something where you don't need a physical or a digital product. It's just your knowledge being distributed to someone else for some form of a transformation, whether that's building a business, getting a new job, changing your life. I wanted to help those people basically think like a media company so that they can craft one offer, take that one offer and put it into what I've been calling a pre-buy experience. That can be a podcast like we're on now. It can be a YouTube deep dive that's maybe an hour or two. It can be a 2-day intensive workshop that's virtual or it's in person. But you craft that offer and then you develop a pre-buy experience curriculum behind it, and then you sell that offer there. And I did that because I think with the boom of social, we are losing sight of how to connect with people, which is really weird when you call it social media.
Correct.
Right? It's like we can veer too far into advertising mode and we can forget that there's still a relationship that still needs to be curated, still needs to be owned and nurtured, that will ultimately determine whether or not that person not only buys from you, but continues to work with you at a longer rate. And to the degree that you get that right, you're not only going to not run out of clients, but your best clients will stay with you longer, not because they need you, but because they want to continue building that magic with you. So in a nutshell, that is my entire background.
For some reason on my social media these past couple days, the argument I've seen around how important relationship is in 2026 to sellers has been coming up as a debate. I mean, to me, I thought that was generally kind of like settled science in the fact that as a seller, an enterprise level seller, or somebody who's sold for a long time, that relationship is a super big key. What do you think that relationship plays a part in regards to selling in today's world when we talk about putting the offer? I mean, I understand the likability, the trust factor, the experience, but what about relationship? What part does that play in today's world with the separation, as you just mentioned, around social media and the connectivity of the person on the other side of that social media being an actual person?
Yeah, the thing that I like the most about it is I understand why people say the KLT, the know, the like, and the trust. I think they're leaving out a certain emotion that is happening in the mind of the person who's getting content right. And that emotion is tension. So the reason why I say relationships are important is not so much because of the know, like, and trust factor, although that is present and that will always be important, classic sales, but because that person has decided to KLT you, we'll use that as an abbreviation, they're now feeling the tension to fix what's broken. And so my workshop method or offer method, when I'm telling people, hey, relationships matter, and no one needs to hear that anymore. We all understand that that is important. But the relationship matters to the degree that you can help that someone face the tension that they need to fix something that's broken. And when you can help someone in the right relationship be honest with themselves and say, I do actually need to close these gaps in order to get where I'm going, that's where that deep kind of buyer behavior really becomes so psychologically impactful that they can't help but throw their credit card at the screen to buy from you. And from there, that relationship continues in the form of a deeper sense of trust, which is you delivering for that client. So if you're only creating tension, the relationship that exists will now break if you don't deliver for the client, and also if the client doesn't deliver for themselves by doing the work. So I look at relationships in the form of them creating a healthy tension, not an animosity, nothing that's negative about that tension. I mean that word in the healthiest possible sense. But the people who actually make it online, like my clients and coaches who are making it online, they are honest with themselves to say, I have broken processes. I might even be broken as a person the way that I'm thinking. But I know that if I fix it, X will happen. So the richer coaches, I guess, if we want to use it that way, or the more wealthy coaches, the coaches who seem to have it figured out, they make the decision fast because they're honest with themselves about the tension they're feeling to get whatever's broken fixed. And then they get it fixed, and then they move on to bigger and greater things. That's why I like the relationships.
What part of, and I see this so often in just sales, and we can talk about the side of the sales that you coach and consult with and helping businesses go there. And I heard you say that, what I heard you say is sometimes the most valuable thing is momentum, and finding that momentum within your own business, getting that one yes kind of tends to lead to the next yes and the next yes. And sometimes what I see in sellers is the hardest challenge is to just start that momentum, getting that downhill trajectory. Do you see that same thing in what you do? Is like you got to get the belief in the yes, and then once you get that, it's like, man, you can catch fire in that. I see that so often with SDRs, AEs, younger sales guys that I might work with. I can tell them how much it works. I can tell them how much everybody else has benefited this, but until they get that momentum from their own yes, it's really tough for them to connect those things.
Yeah, you're so spot on, man. I'm glad you said this. I was speaking with one of my clients yesterday, and she was terrified to do her first pre-buy experience. So it took her a little bit to get up and going. And then when she sent everything out, like the link to join her workshop, she sent the wrong link. So of the 80 leads that were supposed to show up, they're all kind of mismatched. And then it turned into like only 10 who showed up. She's got some great next steps, but one in particular that's over 50 grand for a B2B business. And that all worked out. And what's crazy about this is she put out her pre-buy experience into the atmosphere. It didn't go as planned. The people who were getting ready, the business that's getting ready to consider a 50K plus deal with her, didn't even attend. They registered for her event, didn't attend, but forwarded it up the chain and said, this person who we're considering, referring to my client, is an authority on a particular topic. We need to entertain the idea of a deal. So she's already put together the proposal. And she probably won't hear back until January, like at the end of the year, and those deals take a while.
Right.
But the idea that starting, going through the mud, getting a little sloppy, not having it all figured out, that is single-handedly one of the best advantages of successful people, because they understand the value of momentum, or as other people say, like Gary Vee, like speed, right? Speed, speed, speed. And it kind of makes up for any sloppiness that's there, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. In some cases, it actually really benefits you in a large way. So launch, even if it doesn't feel perfect, because the perfection that you're actually seeking will only come when you stop overthinking it and you just start building it. That's the only way it works.
Ryan, they say that old saying, and I'll probably mess it up, but the general idea is the best ideas are in one single place in every city. You know, where the best ideas are in every city?
Yeah.
The graveyard.
I know what you're talking about.
Right. They're in the graveyard because so many people died with those ideas because they never took them to market, because they were waiting for those things to be perfect and all the stars to align and everything to go exactly right for them to do it. And they ended up never making the move. I think that's been a real key advantage to me is, whether that be ignorance, whether that just be a lack of intelligence on my behalf, sometimes just going, having a belief in your gut instinct has always been a strength of mine. I'm very decisive, but I'm also, because I'm so decisive, never married to any decision too long term. I can make a decision quickly, but I can also pivot quickly. And I think that's an important part of an entrepreneur, which is when you spend a year putting together the perfect plan, then what causes that biggest problem I see is you're so willing to divert from that perfect plan when it doesn't go correctly. And that's where you get stuck in the mud. I mean, I'm sure you see that as well, Ryan.
Yeah, it's funny. Reid Hoffman, one of the founders of LinkedIn, was just on a podcast a couple weeks ago and basically said the idea that you have goes to the graveyard every day. I'm kind of paraphrasing him, but he basically says your idea dies every day unless you're, as a startup owner, pumping new belief into that idea, both for yourself, any employees you're working with, any clients or partners you're working with. So you really need to nurture that. But that nurturing is often the most misunderstood part. We think it means we have to study and perfect and then launch. And there's a certain truth to that, but it's that's where we get it backwards. It should be, yes, prepare a little bit, but also launch in tandem. And it's going to feel weird. It's going to be ugly. You're going to make so many more mistakes. Like we said, you'll make more mistakes than you get wins, but it is the way. And I've seen it with myself. I know you've experienced it. My clients experience it. Everyone experiences it. It is the thing in common. So give yourself permission, for those who are listening to this, fail and just keep
Be willing
going.
to. Yeah, be
Yeah,
willing
be
to fail.
willing
I mean,
to.
that's the biggest part is just be willing to fail. And that's the only way you'll win. And you'll only receive the rewards when you're willing to fail. If you never take the risk to win, then you'll never win. You'll never lose, but you'll also never win. I mean, there's so many people that just go through their life never able to win because of that. And I'm going to give you two ends of the spectrum here, Ryan. I'd be interested to see what you think is best.
Sure.
You have a client come to you. They're that overconfident, everything's going to go great, I've got it figured out guy who's just going to go to market. Or you have the overthinker, overanalyzer, but really, really talented, great idea, great business, great knowledge base. Who is in most cases going to be more successful? Is it the underprepared but overconfident person? The overprepared, underconfident person, assuming that they have the strengths on either end?
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's the underprepared but overconfident person, because that puts them in motion. They're okay knowing that they don't have it all figured out. And that was literally what the same client that I was referring to that has that 50K plus deal on the line. She told me, she's like, I was terrified. I'm still terrified. And but now this result has happened. And it's all because she just put something out into the universe. And I don't mean that in like a weird spiritual, metaphysical type way or anything like that. I'm just saying she wasn't doing something previously. She started doing something now, and a result came out of it. And if we just think of like that in its most basic knowledge format, I wasn't doing this, I started doing this, now I have a benchmark because it's leading to this. I guess I should just do more of this. Like Alex Hormozi says, it's not so much that this thing didn't work, you just need more volume with it. More volume with leads, more repetitions or more swings at the plate, more whatever baseball or sports analogy you want to use, even if it's ugly. No one ever said it needed to be pretty. And even 10 years from now, your business will just be better in revenue or so on. But it'll have gone through so many scars that it'll look almost uglier in a sense, because as you get bigger and so on and do more volume, every failure feels even worse than some of the first stuff because it just, there's more on the line, but it still doesn't matter. You still learn from it and you still progress. So welcome to humanity, I guess, right?
Right. Let's fast forward a little bit. We've got the person who's made the jump. They've come up with the offer. They put it in the universe. They've done that part. What is, in your experience, the most common mistake that happens next? Where do most people miss? And where can you kind of give them guidance on what to look for in not making that miss?
Yeah, they stop trusting their experience. So they get confident about the offer that they want to sell, but then they don't trust their experience when it comes time to talk about that offer with people. And usually that just means someone's afraid to present in a way because they don't want to sound salesy, or they don't want to ask for the sale, or they want to quote unquote nurture the relationship further. Well, you don't even know, but you might be standing on diamonds in terms of clients who have been ready to buy. They've been paying attention to your content, and they were just waiting for you to buy. 2 months ago, I had someone say, I was ready to buy when I heard you speaking on this other workshop, but I didn't hear an offer presented. Ooh. And when she finally bought, she's like, almost as if she was basically saying to me, like, finally, you asked for the sale.
Right.
And it was like, even as someone who's kind of been a veteran in this space over the past 2 years, and I mean that really lightly, that was like a real humble moment for me to not forget about what got me to where I'm at. And that usually just meant I'm able to relate to someone. I'm able to trust my experience when relating to that someone. I'm okay knowing that some people will want that experience and some people will say it's just not for me. And then I'm okay saying, based on that experience, I'd like to ask for the sale. And when I do that, sales come in. And sometimes they don't, and sometimes they do. And it's not $1 million overnight formula, but it is a tried and true tested path. So it's just so, we could unpack this thing forever, you know? It's just so important.
Ryan, I think one of the questions that's not asked enough to entrepreneurs, not asked enough to employees, whether you're an entry-level person or you're Elon Musk, is understanding what the individual's why is. So Ryan, let me ask you now, right now today where you are in your business, what's your why? Why do you get up? Why do you work hard? Why do you do what you do every day?
Yeah, I do it because I really like the lifestyle it enables with me and my wife. So we don't have kids, right? Aside from like our dogs, but we are morning people. We like to go to the gym together. We like to go on walks together. We're very, very basic, right? The most edgy thing we would do is maybe go to a movie on a Monday night instead of a Friday night, right? Yeah. So my why is just being able to spend time with her because she is my absolute best friend. And we've been married for almost 11 years now, and it feels like we just met, So I get to do that. And lately now, as I start to venture into the YouTube atmosphere, she's learning how to edit videos. So now we're working on the business together. So my why is just to be able to hang out with my wife. I don't need to build a $1 billion company. I don't need to build a $100 million company, right? I've been able to build a 7-figure business, and ideally that stays as a lifestyle business that enables the qualitative time that I get with my wife. And if I only ever do that, awesome. I'll count that as a success. I don't ever need to be in a boardroom again. And, Lord willing, I won't have to, but if I have to and I find myself in another executive role, okay, amazing. That'll work too. I'll be content with that. But that's really why I'm doing all this.
That's awesome. And look, what I get nervous when I ask that question to somebody and they answer me with anything to do with money. I get very nervous because I've not made all the money in the world. It sounds like you've not made all the money in the world, but I've made enough money to understand that is only when you're chasing material things that those material things run out. And when your happiness is tied to material things, the only way you fulfill that happiness, keep buying more things. And it's just a cycle of displeasure. And so having fulfillment outside of that is so enjoyable. For me, when I realized that I just had a huge passion for building. I love building. And what I mean by that is, when I first started off in my career, Ryan, I was an individual seller. I've never went to college. I'm not highly educated, not really highly functional outside of sales. But ever since I've been in sales, I've always been a top performer. I've been a great individual performer. In about 2016, I was given a chance to run my first team. And that was an eye-opening experience for me. Because what I had to learn at that time, Ryan, was how to duplicate myself. And I always translated my sports background into my sales background because it allowed me to leverage the competitiveness that was so valuable on the sports side on the sales side. But then where I elevated into a leadership role that really allowed the sports background to take advantage of is because I studied. And I've always been that athlete who's never been the tallest, fastest, most athletic guy out there, but I've always been one of the best people on the court because I would study the game and learn how to get the most out of my opportunity. And when I looked at people like basketball, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, these great players in the 80s when I was a child, they all tried to go into coaching and they failed at that. And then you see people like Phil Jackson, you see people like Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich, these guys that were never great players, they were serviceable, but then they became elite as coaches. So I figured out that you need to build a system, a duplicatable system that will get the most out of your Michael Jordans and Kobe's with a triangle offense, but also get the most out of your role players. And when I learned that process, what really grew in me, Ryan, is I learned how much I love developing people and developing process and developing teams. And when I unlocked that within me, my potential went through the roof. And I stopped chasing that career growth and that promotion every year, that pay raise every year. And I started chasing the things that truly drove me to get better every day, and that's the fulfillment of helping the people around me. I have a similar type of thing and pathway in that. I mean, now you're helping people, right? That helping people has fulfilled that lifestyle that you just mentioned, having that freedom and flexibility, both financially and time with your wife. But did you see that same level of enjoyment out of being able to take somebody who was a little bit unmoldable piece of clay and then molding them into that star that they could be?
Yeah, definitely. And this sounds weird, but it's like me projecting my own desires onto someone else. And I don't mean that in a negative way. That projection is really just to help me identify other people who have felt the same way that I felt in my career. And here's like the concrete example. I've held usually two different style of roles in my career. Some that are ambiguous roles that would be more on the content front, like there's some objectivity to them, but there's also a lot of testing and learning. And it's hard for me to see how my contributions were valuable in those moments. But when I've held the other side of the roles where I could easily measure how this action led to this goal and help the company in this way, when I could connect those dots as if it were just like a child game where you used to connect the dots with different things, when I could do that, my career satisfaction not only was higher, but I felt like I was more aligned with my why and my purpose and so on. So that's why I do what I do today, because I felt that, well, if that's how I think, and it's very black and white, no gray areas, then I'm more attracted to working with people who will allow me to be respectfully candid with them so they can hear what they need to hear in a way that enables them to do the same thing, focus on the most objective task that brings the most objective result. Because in so doing, they now look inwardly and say, I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm meeting the people I need to meet. I'm helping the people I need to help. I'm hitting the goals I want to hit. It's not only making me deeper in terms of the revenue, right? Or I guess accelerating the revenue, but I'm also, and this is the crux of it, I'm also becoming the person who can manage that success no matter how high it goes. You have to become a certain person who can build their own six-figure business. But then you need to assume an enhanced identity to turn that six-figure business into a seven-figure business. So it's basically a long series of you becoming. And I don't mean to sound like super like over life coachy in that, but it really is that to a certain degree. So my goal is understanding that and having the self-awareness to even understand that I needed to understand that in the first place. And now it allows me to go and coach others who can best relate to what I just said right there. And I think just like how you found it is very similar. I just love the story you told.
Is there any things that you think that somebody who ultimately wants to be the most successful need to be able to do? I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I forget his name. Andy Elliott. You know who he is?
I don't.
You heard that name? You probably will know him if you see him. He's a bald head
guy
in
I
the
will.
automotive space. He's the guy that will stand in front of a room and he'll call up a guy who's 50 pounds overweight up to the front of the room and tell him to take their shirt off. And then he'll berate them around how they're not taking their health seriously, which means they can't take their life seriously. And if they got that in order, everything else will fall in place. And I don't necessarily disagree with that message. I think the tact of that message is a little bit off-putting to most people, but the general message itself, I think, is healthy. And if that was my brother, maybe communicating that to my brother or a loved one would be different than communicating it to a stranger in front of a room full of strangers. I also heard him talk about as he builds his business, as he's building business with partners, that if he ever found out a partner of his cheated on their wife, he'd stop being partners with them because of standards. How do you feel about a person like that having such strict standards, even though maybe those standards are a good thing to have, but do you think it's important for somebody who sits in that type of seat or in a seat like you or I who is in charge of helping people like communicate those standards? Or is it less on us to communicate those standards, more on just imparting the wisdom and letting people do with the wisdom as possible?
Yeah, look, I've seen both ways work, but as social media begins to change from just basic general interest media to more of that personality-driven social media, I think those things will become more important. And I want to say that carefully because what I don't mean is that everyone now should be as polarizing and controversial as possible, like calling someone up to the stage, belittling them on their weight. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is we're now in kind of social media, I don't know, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 10.0, whatever we want to classify that is. We're standing out in crowded markets, and spoiler alert, every coaching offer in knowledge-based business, no matter how niche you think it is already crowded and saturated. Correct. But you stand out when you hold to certain principles and convictions, how you deliver them, how your story and experience are infused into them. So yeah, I do believe you should lead with convictions, so long as it's original to you. And I'm not saying it can't be the same as someone else's, but like when you sell something you don't really believe in, you feel it. Okay, same thing when you're marketing or coaching someone. If you're telling somebody something that you don't actually believe in, to the degree that you practice it yourself, have practiced it yourself, and got results from it yourself, it's probably not going to work. And it's probably not going to work because they'll feel that fakeness too. And that's the negative tension, right? That can come into there where you're feeling it, they're feeling it. And like a magnet, when they don't fuse together very well and you're trying to force it together. So I do think it's important, man. And I'm glad you brought that up. But it's going to look different for everyone. And that is A-okay.
It's something I've wrestled with over the past couple of weeks. So just to give you a story, there's a guy named Brandon Clouser. He was on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. His podcast came out a few weeks ago. He all of a sudden showed up on my LinkedIn channel. about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, something of that nature. And his whole thing is he started attacking all the gurus in sales for enterprise sales and software, started attacking them. In that they're doing this group webinar-based training where they're not connecting with people, they're not doing one-to-one connections, they're just doing cookie-cutter stuff. And he went very aggressive, and he went after that, what he calls himself the cohort killer. He is super outspoken and very aggressive in that tonality with it. And because of it, he's gotten a lot of attention. And I kind of resemble it to when Conor McGregor came in the UFC and he started calling out everybody, and you either loved Conor or you hated him, and this guy kind of has the same thing. And I've talked with him. I've had many conversations with him now, and it is true. It is genuine. He is not putting on an act. He truly hates that side of the industry and truly believes that one-to-one coaching is the way to go. And he's now made a very successful one-to-one coaching business out of him attacking the alternative. And so what I struggle with, though, Ryan, is when I was in the corporate landscape, I actually was very aggressive and outspoken, and I actually rubbed a lot of people wrong in the corporate world. Then I matured and I grew up, and as I'm leaving the corporate world, starting my own business, I then tampered a lot of my personality as I went into my own corporate landscape, which in reality, I think most people would do the quite opposite. When they're in the corporate world, they'd be significantly more tampered and more HR in that regards. And then when they get free and they're not dependent on that landmines, then they now open up a little bit. I've done the opposite. I have it within me. It's natural. I tamper it quite a bit. But I met with Brandon. I met with a couple other people who kind of have a more polarizing opinion. They were like, you got to let it go. You've got to draw attention. You've got to be able to say the things that people think but aren't willing to say. That's the flexibility and the freedom that you have in the seat that you're sitting in. But it's been tough for me to pull that trigger again. And I just don't know if it's that, you put out a certain thing on social media and you want to present yourself a certain way. And I equate that to the same thing of like politics and religion. I'm a religious guy. I don't talk about religion on social media. Because it's a polarizing topic. I like politics. I've got an opinion on politics. I don't talk about politics in my business life. But maybe it would benefit me to be more genuine to who I truly am and to be outspoken about my beliefs in that regards. But it's been tough for me to pull the trigger. Any advice from me as somebody who's maybe been around this block and helped somebody like me before?
Yeah, and I wish it would sound better than what I'm about to tell you right now.
Tell it to me as it is.
But we can unpack it, right?
Please.
Look, man, do what works for you. And to me, when I hear what you're saying, it sounds like you've evolved into something else, right? Yeah. Or matured, whatever that word is. And we don't have to find that specific word there. It doesn't mean you have to go back. And what I tell people is, don't be controversial just for the sake of being controversial. And also don't be introverted just for the sake of being introverted. You might be someone who's polarizing and that works, like the example you gave. Yeah. But you also might be someone who's not polarizing and very quiet, and that also works. Or you might be a hybrid and you might be right in the middle. I've seen everything work. From one-to-one coaching, I've seen it work. I built it myself, but I've also seen one-to-many work in like a group coaching program. I've seen one-to-many work in terms of selling on workshops. I've seen one-to-one work in terms of selling on a sales call. And it really will just come down to what is going to work for you in a way that, one, you just flat out enjoy it. Two, it actually is bringing in those clients. Three, it actually is helping those clients take steps forward to the big transformation you offer. And then four, it just continues to scale with the new systems that you build upon it. It continues to compound. So I think for you, one of the beautiful things that I love about the creator economy that we now find ourselves in is that there isn't a wrong choice. There's just your choice. And I know that is cliche to even say that, but it is true. And I used to think it's not true as someone who came from board presentations and backgrounds, certain ways of thinking, just like you did, but also very similarly. For a while, even as like a new manager, even a newer executive, maybe I even shouldn't have been an executive at that time. As I look back and reflect on areas where I failed people because I wasn't leading the right way, kind of like you in a sense, right? Maybe I got too defensive and I did not react well. Maybe I was too over the top. Maybe my management style should have been more lock arms and handhold instead of command and point in different directions. I reflect on that a lot. And there's a
Yeah.
lot that I'd go back and change. And there's a lot that I double down and feel convicted with. But decide who you're at, who you are today. And
Yeah.
maybe you're no longer that person in there. And I think the answer, no matter what you do, if it's truly that authentically you thing, another cliche thing that I
That's
hate
the most
saying, but it's
important, right?
also true. You know what I mean?
Be
Like
the authentic
embrace that
version.
dude and own it. Yeah, own it to the moon.
Yeah, and I would say as I hear you talk through it, like as I reflect on it, and I've had this, I'm a very introspective, reflective guy. And to your point
Yeah.
is I value the fact that I'm very self-aware and I'm very studious within myself. And I think that if I can't be honest with myself, then how could I be honest with the people around me? And so I think that's a very important attribute for me to look at myself. And look, when I got originally promoted, I was a hot shot, I would say an asshole. I was a guy who was a leader that would lead by example, but didn't know how to have people want to follow him other than the fact that he was a guy that was worth being followed in a sense. And it was just immaturity. And my company believed in me enough to get me an executive coach who helped teach me a little bit more about how to be a better leader. And I think that's been fantastic for me. And I think that today, one of the other evolutions in regards to my knowledge, which I've learned over the past 8 years, is the importance of a professional network. And that's probably my biggest thing I'm focusing on right now within my career is increasing my strong professional network. And that's one of the biggest reasons I started this podcast, having people around me that are significantly better than me, more accomplished than me, people that I can learn from. And at times, hopefully I can provide some wisdom back to those people, but really collecting a professional network is something that I really overlooked early in my career. I chased that money. I chased the titles. I chased the promotions, but I didn't chase the skill development and the professional network development side. And I think that's what a lot of young people I talk to is bypass the money up front. I mean, you got to make money. We all got to live. We got to eat. But if you can have an opportunity where you can do massive skill development and you can put yourself in rooms with people that you can learn from and you can surround yourself with, that's way more valuable long-term than the money that you'll make in the short-term aspect. And that's something I wish somebody would have told me earlier. So yeah, I would say that the biggest reflection I would have is it's just been a maturity. It's just been a growth. It's just been there was a place I was, and I've learned from certain things. I've evolved in certain ways, and there's places where I am now, and I value different things today than I did back then. I think that's just a natural part of evolution. I don't want to hold myself back and not be that truest, genuine version of myself on either side. I don't want to go polarized to be that. I also don't want to dampen the experience and the knowledge I have. And it's just that push and that pull. Now, Ryan, there's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of consultants. I didn't realize it until I got into space, and now I am drowning with people I know. And there's a ton of great of them. But there's also, I'm sure, a lot of people that shouldn't be in this space. Is there anything you see when you'll meet with a prospective client that you might look at him and say, you're not somebody I could work with because you're not ready or you don't have something that I need to be able to help you? Have you ever run into that?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that I look at that too, and it's usually someone who's very inexperienced in life that is trying to work with clients who have reached a certain threshold of experience that far surpasses the person who's selling it. So if you're a mid-level manager and you're trying to sell to executives, probably not going to work. Or said another way, if you're a mid-level manager and your whole goal is to help someone become a better leader because you've been in leadership roles, it's not that it doesn't work. And I don't want to discourage anyone, so don't hear me the wrong way that you shouldn't do it. But you need to ask yourself who that true avatar should be. Should it truly be the executive, or should it be someone who's at your level? And what is going to separate you? How are they going to see your journey as being a few steps ahead of them so that they want to tag themselves along with you to not necessarily ride your coattails or follow your same path, but glean true insights that lead to a deep transformation in their own career? Or another example where it could be someone who's fresh out of a university. And again, that is an amazing thing. You're probably going to go on and do some amazing stuff if you've got an ambitious and entrepreneurial mindset. But again, if there's not a lot accomplished in that regard, don't try to be a bro marketer and oversell because you saw a cool YouTube hook or an email headline that made you want to buy something. Just be careful with how you position yourself online because you'll get the attention. But are you going to be able to keep it and compound it because you delivered a result? And because you delivered that result, it now improves your marketing because you can show up and say, I did help someone do this. So don't be so quick to just jump the gun and get in there if the experience doesn't match. And for anyone out there who's looking at buying, before you buy from that coach, go to their LinkedIn profile. What have they done? What roles have they held? Are they actually articulating their experience, or are they just a good marketer? If they're really good at content, but they don't have the experiential background that lines up, maybe there's a reason for you to do some more due diligence before you say yes. I'm not saying say no to that person, but ask those due diligent questions. Take the time to look at a few other coaches and decide for yourself, what is that best path? And that's usually the stuff that I run into when I see it online, because it's just an open market.
Do you find people have difficulty displaying their experience, displaying their value to the market in that sense? Or do you feel like people are pretty good at marketing themselves when they have the relevant experience?
I think it's a skill that they learn over time. Myself included, I was not good at marketing my experience because all we ever learned how to market our experience was to write our resume. We don't know how to wrap a story around the results. We don't know how to communicate why a result mattered because of the consequences that would have been there if we didn't hit that result. So we've all kind of learned to speak in corporate terms, just really short and brief, kind of, or super elongated with no objectivity at all, just all. So I would say that most people actually don't know how to do that. The ones who accelerate faster learn that faster and actually know to dedicate time to learning how to do that. And it's never going to change. If we had the same conversation in 20 years, it's all going to be about learning how to tell a story that displays consequences for inaction or bad action and drives results from good action or exceptional action. And being able to wrap that into a story instead of keeping it as a fact, that will be the difference as to why someone decides to keep listening to you, why they lock in and say, I have to be in the room with this person and I need to hear more.
Yeah, it's interesting. We made a decision about a year and a half ago in my business, and I'd say these three different things are the three things that have probably evolved my business more than anything. Started right here with this, a podcast. Why I started the podcast, Ryan, was because I'm not a natural self-marketer. I'm a salesman, true and true, but I don't like to sell to people that I know. One of my first sales jobs, I used to sell DirecTV inside of like Sam's Clubs and Best Buys. And if a person I knew from my hometown walked into that store, I'd run the other way. Not that I couldn't sell them. I just don't like self-promotion. I don't like to sell to people I know. And so people that were on my social media would never really know what I did because I didn't like it. It wasn't natural. But as I became an entrepreneur and became a business owner and somebody who did coaching and consulting, I needed to put more content out there. So instead of me self-aggrandizing about myself, I created a podcast to have people on to learn, to feed my curiosity that in which I have. And to be able to have more organic conversations around who I am and what I've done and those types of things. And that has naturally turned into significantly more content about me on the internet, both on my business, on my channels, and on a podcast channel that's helped me. Secondarily, I decided to bring in a marketing team within my organization to help me enhance my social media presence, to help me tell that story that's not natural for me to tell. Because once again, I think it's kind of tacky to talk a lot about yourself. It's not something that I think feels good. Those two things along with, and we just added this in the past, I'd say 4 months, which is every single week, my marketing team, internal team, shows up for 1 hour a week, and they come with ideas and clips for me to create. They've already come up with the hook and the script for me to create content around what I do within my business. And I do quite a few different things. And so it leaves it to where I, the CEO, don't have to be the creative one. I've got creative people inside of my organization who do that. And those three things have allowed me to now be able to have my story and the credibility around who I am. And now when I reach out to guys like you who are incredibly successful, you're at least willing to say, who is this guy? To where a year and a half ago, if I would have done that, you would have likely not, because I didn't have any story being told about who I am, what I've done, and I had no credibility. So now when I reach out to a client and I say, hey, I've done some research on you, I have an idea I want to share with you of ways I've helped other businesses, they're at least willing to listen because I've got credible content and I've got hours and hours of content on me, on line, being able to tell that story. And as now I've done that for myself, I've realized how big of a gap it is for so many people. And I'm trying to preach it from the mountaintops, how everybody should start a podcast if they don't have one, to be able to solve for this big problem. Now, you mentioned earlier, Ryan, you're getting deeper into YouTube right now. And you said your wife's learning how to edit videos. Describe to me, what does that mean? When you say I'm getting deeper into YouTube, what does that mean?
Yeah, for me, I think in the realm of social media, you've got a lot of your short form channels, your LinkedIn's, your TikToks, your Reels, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It drives attention. But what I'm now seeing in terms of a trend is really, if you think about the attention it drives, is for lack of a better term, it's kind of like toilet bowl content. The content doesn't suck. It may be great, but people are usually watching it when they're doing something else. One of the words that I just used is the hint. It's not someone necessarily sitting down, committing intelligent brain power to understand a process, to solve a problem, to hear from an expert. Those are two entirely different viewing sessions. One is just fast and not necessarily memorable. Not saying it's not done. There are plenty of people who do short form content, and it should be a part of your strategy. But I think creating long form content first is really now going to be an important next step for people, because it's going to, that the value of the click, if that person is in your niche, the value of saying, wow, that video is 45 minutes. I'm going to sit down and watch it. Yeah, it's an investment of time, and it just builds that out. But like you, I think having a channel that can double as a podcast, I think is paramount. And it's a little tricky to do, right? But so long as the script that you write, and yes, I do recommend everyone's script. I even recommend people use teleprompters. But the script that you write, if it had no visual, would it survive in a podcast platform like Spotify? People were just listening to it. And I think that's the qualitative test. You don't need to overthink it beyond that. Do you need a visual? And there's not a wrong answer. If the answer is no, and you're going for YouTube strictly, and it won't be a podcast because you have to have visual in there, that's okay. Okay, so hear me correctly. But I do think there is strong benefit to saying this one piece of long form content can live on Apple, it can live on Spotify, and it certainly can be a YouTube video. Long form content are consumed on those platforms. And if you can do one piece of content that gets you out to 3 areas, congrats. You've done scale with long form content, and it's just a matter of you putting in the reps to do it. So I'm taking a similar approach, and I think that YouTube is just so important. But learning thumbnails and titles and how to package and position that video versus just getting the recording done, astronomically different results for the people who invest time in that. So all of my time is going deeply into just packaging and positioning.
I found out just a quick trick, and this will go for anybody. I found out a quick trick yesterday from a marketing specialist who told me how you save that file. Where do you record your YouTube content? Do you record it on a platform like this or just somewhere else?
I use OBS and then just record locally to my machine.
How you save it and then how you upload the file name is one of the biggest SEO differentiators for YouTube that I did not know for over a year of posting content. I was just using some random Riverside file name, posting it on YouTube, but that file name having the metadata built into the name of the file is one of the biggest YouTube differentiators. So if you're not doing that now, if you are not doing it, Ryan, or somebody who's listening who's loading content on YouTube, if your file name is not set up correctly, then do that. If you need help on how to do it, let me know. I'll send you a Loom video that my marketing friend sent to me. I'll give it to you. I'm not trying to like charge you for it, but just like when he told that to me, it was like, and so I want to share it with as many people as possible.
That is smart dude. I love that. I've thought about that often. So don't call it something like the date of the video that you're uploading. Call it what it is. Here's a hack for you as well. We'll use the word hack lightly. Whatever the title of that YouTube video is going to be is something that, at least that's a starting point for making the title of the name of the file, and just write it out like you would as the title.
Yeah. And we're working on a strategy now. This is a slight last hack, is hook in the thumbnail, slightly different title, and then making sure that in the first 10 seconds, the clip is hooked in the first 10 seconds of the hook on the front of the thumbnail is also a thing that will keep your engagement watch time significantly higher. So if your thumbnail hook says whatever it might be, like this is the #1 way to get more customers, then you need to have a clip in the first 10 seconds of your video that says that exact thing that will then allow somebody to continue to watch it, because watch time and view time is based off of length of watch, not just cutting it on for 5 seconds. So if you want to get your viewers up, that's a big way to get your viewers up to keep longer viewing experience.
I love that.
Ryan, I could talk with you all day. Hopefully you and I are going to get a chance to break some bed here pretty soon. As I said, I'm going to try to put together a little bit of a meeting of minds for guys like you and some of the other people that you and I seem to know in common here in the Dallas area. But before we go, any final words for the audience? Anything else you want to share with these guys?
Yeah, for those of you who are still at maybe an executive role, or you've kind of been around the block in your career, you're far more capable than you think of building your own knowledge-based business. And it's just really going to come down to who it is that you want to help and what it is that you want to help them do. And I know you've heard that before. If you've been curious, you've looked online, you've heard many different people you might deem as a guru say those things. Well, guess what, man? Those gurus are actually right. You really can do this, and you are better at it than you think. So I would just encourage you to take it more seriously. Really look into what it means to craft an offer that you would then go to market with on social media. I know we all get scared about that because our coworkers are going to see us doing stuff and so on, but this is self-development in and of itself. You becoming a coach with your experience, which is far more valuable than you think, is actually its own form of self-development. And so I would encourage you to explore it. That might mean you try it part-time while you're still working full-time. It might mean you leave corporate for a season, and if it's not something you like, you go back. I stayed in my corporate role for 6 months as a VP of content strategy, tested it on the side, finally made a jump, didn't like it for 6 months. Now I can't picture my life not doing what I'm doing. There is so much information that you will consume. You will become a different person, all for the better, win or fail. There really is no fail. I use that word lightly, but even if you decided to go back to corporate, that is not you failing. You will go back to corporate as an absolute weapon with an entirely different perspective. So it's just so valuable.
Yeah, I'm going to add on to those. I'm going to add 2 points onto that because I completely just could not agree with that concept more. Number one, the times I've grown the most as an individual is when I have to then teach it. So becoming a coach and teaching other people how to do it, when you have to create a system to do it. I did jiu-jitsu for over 4 years. The biggest growth I made in jiu-jitsu was when I had an opportunity to start coaching other people earlier in their journey how to do jiu-jitsu, because now that movement that I had learned and ingrained naturally, I had to be able to explain that movement to somebody who didn't have it naturally in me, and that made me grow rapidly. And the same thing happened in my sales career when I wasn't able to leverage my own personal talents, but to have to be able to explain why I did what I did, it made me refine my process even more. And then when it comes to the potential of you leaving corporate world, I struggled with this like so many people did for 3 years because I had golden handcuffs. I had the money that was there, the title that was there, and I'm always like, man, I worked so hard to get here. Newsflash, you got there before, you can get there again. It's no problem. If you believe in yourself, go test your merits. And if it doesn't work out, which it will, but if it doesn't, you can always go find that head of sales role at another corporate company. You had it before. Somebody else will be willing to bet on you. Bet on you, and that will make you better. In worst case scenario, there's millions of corporate companies out there that'll be willing to hire you back to that role, or if worst case scenario, you can grow to that role again. I love that message, Ryan. Absolutely. I tell that to everybody. You can always go find the role you do today again, but if you don't make this jump now, you'll never do it. Do it now or don't.
100%, man. Couldn't agree more. Well said.
I've absolutely enjoyed getting to know you today. I enjoy learning from you today. I hope this is just the start of a longer relationship, Ryan. I look forward to learning more from you in this process. And for everybody else, we'll take all of Ryan's information. We'll make sure it's attached here. We'll be getting you access to everything Ryan does, his website, his social media. So if you want to get in contact with him, please do. Even if not, share, get this in front of as many people as possible so that we can have an opportunity to get as many views towards Ryan and towards what we're doing here today. Until next time, Ryan, appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you as well.